Hi, good morning, and welcome to a new episode of ET Retail Cafe by ET Retail. I am Charu Lamba, your host for today, and we have with us Gaurav Singh Kushwaha, the founder of Blue Stone, and we are here to add some bling to your Monday morning. So, Gaurav, welcome to ET Retail Cafe. Tell me how your journey in retail started, because as far as I know, you were an engineer before and then turned into an entrepreneur, had one other startup, and then started Bluestones here. So, can you take us through the entire journey of yours?
Sure. Thanks, Shahrukh, for having me here. So you're right. I graduated from IIT Delhi with a computer science major, and for first 5 to 6 years, I was in programming jobs. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think so. And my first startup was also very closely related to programming. So that was called Chakpak.com, which I started in 2007, and that was a social network persons, right? So it was a hardcore tech job. At that time, getting the traffic on the website, building a website, running a website, building more and more features, all that required a lot of tech expertise, and that is essentially what we built me along with the co-founder, and we operated that for around 3 to 4 years. We had funding from Axim Partners, who's also a backer, the earliest backer in Bluestone, uh, and honestly, we had a good success when it came to building traffic on the website, very strong engagement, product engagement, and so on. But I think what we realized around 2010-11 was that monetization is not easy, especially for the content business. Uh, Monetization avenues in India were not that abundant, and our hunch at that time, our belief at that time was that it was going to take a long time. So then the biggest question in our minds was, should we wait it out, or should we work on something which can have immediate top line, bottom line, and it can be immediate business. So that is when we moved out of it, me and our co-founder, and I decided to start Bluestone. And the idea at that time was, always simple at that time. The idea was simple that you get into okay, we have an expertise to build traffic, we have an expertise to build good online products. But let's use this expertise this time in a category where once we had made it big, there is money in that. Unlike the last time when we made money, only to realize that we were sitting on a small table. So this time the idea was play, but play on a big table. So that was a thought. And Axel, who had invested in my previous company, they also very strongly believe in the category. They very strongly believe in the team also. My team, me basically, and so they also backed it at the idea stage itself. And I had no prior experience of the category. I was not married, so never had experience with the category. I think for men, the experience in this category starts after getting married, and which happened in my case. It started after I started the company. So quite a steep learning curve for me also, and thankfully I had a very good team. I had a very strong team. My co-founder Sudeep, who has been with me since the beginning, he has taken up a lot of responsibilities, especially when it comes to all the operations, setting up design team, setting up manufacturing, setting up a lot of back-end infra to enable us to do what we do. Uh, Honestly, when we started, we had no idea that we would end up becoming a full-blown shooter. I thought, okay, there'll be a website, we'll source products from someone, we'll sell them. But as we started doing it and it's like every year we decided that, okay, this thing is broken, so we need to fix it. And the only way we can fix it for good is by doing it ourselves.
Yeah.
Right. So while the initial thought was that we would go collaborate with designers, we realized that we would have to have our own in-house designing to the fullest. We ended up creating our in-house 3D rendering expertise as well. Then in 2014, we started doing manufacturing in-house as well. And right now we run 4 factories in 3 different cities. And I think 2017-18, when we realized that omni-channel is much better approach than online only in this category, given the nature, price point, and touch and feel and experience that is required. So now we run 200 plus stores.
Oh, fine.
Lots of things in it.
So, challenges, when a new category you were entering altogether, there must be some challenges you must have faced. What were those challenges? And how did you cope up with them? And versus how are the challenges now, and how are you coping up with them?
Sure. So I think first 3-4 years were more about getting the basics in place. Now, if you see many of the businesses or many of the startups that get started in India, they have parallels in Western markets. So when Flipkart started, there was Amazon Purveyat. When Ola started, there was Uber to look at. And so is the case with many other things. But if you look at jewelry as a category, this is very, very fundamental to India. In fact, India is a leader in this category, not a follower. So whether it's in Western markets, whether it's in European markets, there were no paddlers. There was no one who was actually doing it the way it used to be done in India. So first 3 to 4 years, we had to innovate, and we had to figure out the fundamental nuance of that, right? It was more than e-commerce. For example, I'll give you. So when we started, at that time, Flipkart, Amazon already had, it's 100,000, 200,000, 500,000 designs, say. But fundamentally, this category number does not matter. It's not a category like books that you can have 100 million titles. But that one title that one needs is they can search and put it out.
Yeah.
In this case, even if you have 200,000 designs or 200,000 rings, a woman does not have a nomenclature to pull out the one that she wants, right? So the curation matters more than numbers in this particular category. The presentation matters a lot because this is not a very specific issue to a category. It's not a USB drive you're selling, or it's not a mobile you're selling. That customer, that woman has to love that piece enough for her to actually order it online. So jewelry presentation was not solved. Digital presentation. I'm saying physically jewelers represented. Jewelers get all the lighting right in the showroom. It has to, this diamond shines brighter than what it is. But in digital, no one was doing a good job at that time. So we were the first ones who introduced 3D rendering for jewelry presentation, which actually gave the true sense of how the pieces were to look. These are very small pieces. Jewelry pieces are this big. When you present it on laptop, then we have to actually blow it to some 10x, 20x, and so on. And when you do that blow up, the product just does not look that beautiful because of the reflecting surfaces and refracting surfaces. Sends the light back or lets the light pass through. It's not easy to photograph. So that was the first one. The second itself was just-in-time manufacturing. We realized that if you were to enable so many choices for customers, we cannot inventorize everything. It's a very, very expensive. It's a very expensive product. And if we were to provide lots of choices, then the only way we can do is if we can manufacture the product after the order is received. Now the whole industry, the whole supply side was not clear for it. We tried working with lots of other job workers and factories, but their typical turnaround time was 3 to 4 weeks. They said, who would wait for 3 to 4 weeks after placing the order? And so we had to set up our own manufacturing, which we thought that you needed only for some time, but now we realize that that's a very, very unique strength that we have. I don't think any jeweler in the country manufactures 100% in-house as much as we do. So that was something that we did in 2014. Then the whole tech stack that is built. I mean, I do think that there will be a single jeweler who has the entire technology built in-house, whether it's supply chain management, whether it's customer CRM, customer source, whether it's CRM, whether it's website, whether it's point of sale, order management system, warehouse management system, factory management system. There are so many systems which are built in-house. So we are a tech company and a jewelry company rolled into one, which is a very, very, very unique combination.
So what are the challenges now for you?
I think challenges now is to evolve. So I think we have found our sweet spot. We have found our TG, and which in our case, what started was around 25 to 35-year-old women with independent mindset. And that has now kind of expanded to 25 to 40, 25 to 45, somewhere around that range. I think as our TG also grows, in India, the kind of jewelry that we wear, the kind of events that you go to, all those things also change. So what we are realizing is when the same woman was 30 versus she's 50, her jewelry evolves. So we need to also evolve in line with that. Now, the conscious call that we have taken that we are not going to work, that we are going to do manufacturing, designing, everything now, is that has advantages and that has disadvantages. The biggest challenge for us is how do we stay updated? If someone is working with a manufacturer who's working with 10 other retailers, through that manufacturer, you would know what's going on in the money. In our case, we won't. We don't have such an easy access to outward segments. We can look inward in our own data, but that won't tell us what we are blind to.
Yeah.
So by solving for that and evolving products and categories is something that we feel a lot needs to be done there.
So I've worked with various companies, big companies also, and then your other company, tech company, and now this. So there must be some learnings that we have had in the past experience, and what were those learnings, and how are you implying those learnings at Bluestone?
So I'll give you a few parallels. Okay, so I've worked in Amazon, and I realized the importance of having control of the tech. So it takes time. That's given. But so when I started Bluestone, we started with something called PrestaShop, which is it's not like Shopify. It has you can have more control on what you can do, but you still don't have 100% control of the code. So we started with that, but within 6 months we changed it. We changed it to our own homegrown website, which takes more effort, but then you have the flexibility. For example, we were doing omnichannel. It took us 2 months to roll out all the omnichannel features. Now you work on an existing tech stack which someone else has built. You'll have to wait for them to provide those features before you could use them. So I think the importance of tech is kind of very, very, very great. And that I think comes from working in Amazon, where even HRMS was, and human resource development was also in-house. Everything there was in-house. Right? So that's what makes you a very, very strong tech company. Another, I think, from my Chatpat days, one of the things that we did there was we had written we had also dabbled into these games for social media. So if you remember Farmville, Fishville, that era of Zynga games and Facebook games. So at that time, we had built some games and I had a very good command of 3D. So when this problem presented itself, that jewelry, you're not able to get the photographs right, my first port of call was, let's use 3D. This was a big deal because I'd already done that for almost a year. So I knew exactly what it took to do a 3D rendering when we could actually, in those games, when we could actually create such beautiful imagery of things which are not even present physically.
Yeah.
Right? All those crops, all those castles, so what? People used to pay $25 for a crop. As I said, I mean, if those guys who are actually selling virtual stuff, they are putting so much effort into presentation. That if you're selling jewelry, $1,000 design, then you have to actually be very serious about it. So importance of presentation and the beauty of presentation. So as an engineer, you typically, it's very difficult for engineers to actually have appreciation for art and design, honestly. So I developed that appreciation also when we looked at a lot of those things. So what's the difference? What's the difference? With the same Farmville, there were at least 100 copies of Farmville at that time.
Yeah.
But one worked and many others did not. I think these are very, very soft aspects which you cannot just measure in numbers. But if you cannot measure something, does not mean it's not important. It just means that you have limitations. You just are not smart enough or don't have. But it can be very, very good. So appreciation for design actually was very, very, very strong. Even before starting Bluestone. That does not mean that I can differentiate a good design from bad design. But I would give a lot of respect to folks who can. And I won't say, show it to me in numbers, give design to achieve. I would never use words like that, but I see a lot of my fellow engineers use that. Show me the numbers.
So, Gaurav, you said you always have had a very strong team. So, when hiring the team for your company, what are the three specific things that you look into a candidate?
So my initial team was very strong. Then around 2015-16, we tried to grow. And that time, I think a lot of that hiring that I did was very wrong. Now, when I hired a lot more cautiously. So there have been 3 phases. First was that first team that was gathered was more of, I would say, just personal colleagues. Almost all those folks were there. I've known a lot of those folks over a very long time. Or let's say the person that worked with me knew that other person for a very long time. Right? So that whole team kind of got built like friends and family kind of that kind of a setup, and well, very, 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 very good team. Around 2015-16, when we tried to get a lot of, let's say, senior management or experts, a lot of big part of this team fell out. It was just very difficult to. And I think I ended up doing a very bad job of hiring, very, very shorty job of hiring. And we came out of it by around 2017-18, just actually trimmed down significantly. And after that, I'm a lot more cautious. When I hire someone right now, especially so first of all, I don't hire at the top. Okay, don't hire just for PowerPoint presentation or tech and so on just to show that you have some. I don't hire. Okay, I look at culture fit a lot. So if someone is, so in our company generally all everyone is hands on. We look at our own data, we create our own reports and so on and so forth. So if someone has that very that kind of an approach where I need this person to do this, I need that person to do that managerial kind of mindset, we stay away from that at whatever level we are hiring. Whatever CXO is there, if you need to do something, do that yourself. So I think that attitude, that culture, I think evaluate for that very, very, very strongly. I generally have a filter for people who use a lot of jargons and people who talk a lot about, for example, in marketing, I generally see people saying I managed. Because they're in marketing specifically, a lot of people say I managed the budget of 300. So what kind of accolade is that? That only means you spend 300 crore. That's not a big deal. Honestly, my wife can do it. Right? But it's how, what did you get out of it is something that I think a lot of these works look like. So just go very, very, very deep in hiding top manager. But the number one thing is don't let hire for unless there's a very pressing need. Don't let people.
Okay. And when we talk about the consumers now, so consumer behavior you must have also seen changing because there was a time when you started, the jewelry wasn't that expensive. But keeping in mind the price volatility right now, jewelry is becoming expensive day by day. So you must have seen the changes in consumer behavior. What are those changes and how are you adapting to those?
So I think there is some things that we see in our data and there's something we see in the market. I think what's happening is people who are price conscious, they are finding it very, very tricky because the same item that used to cost, let's say, 30,000 rupees now cost around 80, 90. So in that someone lack, the importance of creating that value for money, the importance of creating designs which consume out lesser words, basically lightweight features, how to keep it beautiful yet lightweight. And then I think so the importance of that is doing that category fundamentally is growing. Because see, what used to be called lightweight 20 years back used to be 5,000, 7,000 rupees. The same design right now is of 57, right? So it's still lightweight in terms of weight. In terms of price, it's definitely not lightweight. Right? So hence a lot of innovation is needed in that category. And what I feel, and this is not visible in our numbers because we generally don't deal with a very high value jewelry yet. But what I feel is like 4-5 lakh plus, where people don't care much about money because they have a lot of disposable income. That category also is fundamentally doing. So I think whatever is midway is kind of has no takers. Like what's happening? There's in Indian market, Zepto is growing. Zepto Blanket is doing with it. People are ready to pay premium for quick delivery. And then Meesho is also growing.
Yeah.
Where people are cutting corners to just make sure that they get something for very, very, very cheap. So India is not a single country. It is different countries rolled into different people.
So how is consumer reacting to it currently? I mean, if we talk about consumer behavior 10 years back, what were they looking forward to in the jewelry segment and what are they looking forward to the jewelry segment right?
At a high level, I think there's a general shift happening from heavy wedding pieces to pieces that you can wear more on more occasions. Like you being out and like meeting up with 6 of your 5, 6 of your friends and so on. So that's a gradual shift that's happening. And I think the importance of design in any case is generally going. So while, let's say 15, 20 years back, people were not that discerning, customers were not that discerning about designs because they were just generally not exposed to a lot of designs.
Yeah.
You couldn't browse stuff online. You would not know yahan kya chanta. That's happening across categories, not only in jewelry and apparel also. If you look at it, for the longest time, you hardly have any brands. Same Aditya Birla brands, Peter England, Van Heusen was or same clothes in under different labels. And then right now, I think there are so many D2C brands. So many people. Look at luggage also, right? There was VIP and 3-4 companies. Now we have Mokobara. Now people have started designing in luggage also. Who thought that 10 years back? Right? So I think that in general, the importance of design is going up in the country across all categories. And I think that's a huge opportunity, not only in Q3, across a lot of categories. And D2C is honestly enabling that.
So, I mean, I trying to say that technology is a major enabler for all of the things.
I think internet is an enabler. Technology gives you that strength to play it very, very, very smartly. So yeah, technology, internet, technology is more than internet, correct? Yeah. So when I say internet, I'm saying specific subset of technology. This internet as, let's say, more important to play a role to play in this particular thing than the overall technology.
And now with the interference of AI, how things are going to change in the jewelry segment and other segments as well?
See, retail will evolve. So I think with a lot of this natural language processing and image processing, etc., that AI enables us right now to do a lot of these things at scale. Glean, let's say, insightful stuff from that. Get actionable out of it. A lot of these things can actually make a lot of these things very, 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 very efficient, which otherwise was very difficult. For someone to pass 10 साल पहले, for someone to run 1,000 stores, कहाँ पे क्या चल रहा है पता ही नहीं चलता. So a lot of these things, this connectedness and this data that's getting generated can actually put to use all the CCTVs that are in that store, right? Everything that they're capturing is raw gold, honestly. If you can mine that data and do smart stuff on that data. So I think AI will enable a lot of retail, and specifically in retail, AI enable a lot of retailers to do things a lot more smartly at scale, which shows not that easy. And yeah, the long-term effect, we don't know what enables.
So have you ever got scared? AI is growing so much. What if it takes your job someday? What will you do?
Not about job, but I don't. I'm not that worried about my job, honestly. But my bigger worry is, I think unchecked evolution of AI can lead to existential crisis, not just the jobs. I think it's a power that we don't know the full extent. Feel as humans don't know the full extent of that power. It's just I am one of those in that AI apocalypse camp. Terminator camp.
So lots of people are still apprehensive how AI is going to change the future of retail, or they are maybe the category they're working for specifically. I mean, they are still evaluating and calculating the risks and possibilities applicants. So when we talk about the marketing that they've not touched upon till now in this interaction, I want to know how is marketing are the extra blink to the jewelry segment, online or offline, which customer is attracting more?
See, marketing itself was fundamentally changed over the last few years. More in last few years than, let's say, so internet has been around since 2002, 2003 in a decent state. Then came mobiles in 2000 or smartphones in 2009, and then came TikTok around 4 years back. Right? It just changed everything fundamentally. TikTok and OTT. So I think marketing earlier used to be very, very easy. You in 1 year, you create one brand film, you spend some 2 months figuring out what you want to put in that. And hence you do a very high quality job of that, and then you put it in TV. If you do a good media planning, we get certain hour. A bad media planning, you get 50% display. Right? If you do phenomenally good job, you get 20% more. Right? So it was always range bound, but you knew कि अगर 40 crore का budget है तो उसमें मोटा इतनी running कर देती है impact आया. Now that thing has changed significantly because people move from TV to OTT, right? And while in quantitative terms that move might have been 50%, but qualitatively people more affluent ones are consuming more on OTT. So qualitatively that move might be of another 50%. Now the spot rates on TV did not drop. You guys from the industry say you would know, right? The spot rates have not dropped. Now for the same spend, you're not going to get the same efficiency that you paid to pay years back. As it moved to OTT, everything became CPE. So once it becomes CPE, and then you don't get the advantage of scale. And hence everything became very, very linear, very, very similar to how performance marketing was being done. So brand marketing, unfortunately, in my opinion, is dead, not branding. I'm saying the importance of branding are not discounting.
Yeah.
However, the easy way of establishing your brand, which had been around for a very, very long time, is dead. So it's much, much, much more complicated job. And hence, I think for anyone to succeed in today's world, they'll have to get their hands dirty. They have to understand how the whole online marketing, performance and brand are the other objectives, right? Marketing is still marketing. Or so folks will have to be a lot smarter about how online marketing works. Gone are the days you can just hire some agency and say, "Ye project out." Oh yeah. It's been lot more trickier. I know how to put it, and I think that is what's also giving rise to a lot of D2C brand, because lots of incumbents are not able to cope up with that, right? So if you look at a lot of companies which have been around for 30 years, 40 years, we just used to ठीक है मैं अब नई टीवी कैंपेन रहेंगे डिस्ट्रीब्यूट करने हो जाएगा
Yeah.
नहीं हो रहा.
True. So when you discuss so many issues coming to the retail industry from technology point of view, advertising point of view, how do you see Bluestone growing from here, maybe say 10 years from now?
Feature plans. Plus, I think we'll do our category is a good category. It's a huge category. So, print case store and get our market share currently will be less than 1%. So, lot to work. Specifically on the things that we have worked, expanding our build options, etc. I think, 10 years is a long time. Wow. And as we become more and more comfortable, there are things as an organization, we will try to understand what all strengths we have, and then we'll try to play a contour course. So I think it's as big as it.
It was pleasure talking to you, Gaurav, today, but before we wrap it up, I would love to have a rapid fire with you where I will not give you a chance to think about anything and you have to just answer it quickly. So tell me one of your favorite business book and what have you learned from that?
So execution, there's a book called Execution by Larry Bossuri. I think was the main of the person. I found that book very, very teachers. I don't even remember most of it. I think I read it around 10, 15 years back, but I think it did influence the way I look at a lot of things. So the name of the book is very simple, Execution. How do you just execute?
So being a digital first brand, I want to understand of you, where do you shop from, online or offline?
Person, my brave shops.
Oh, you're pushing online everywhere and you are an offline shopper. Yes.
All time. I'm the old person.
So everybody knows that you are on the show at Bluestone, but nobody knows what you're doing in your free time.
Generally, catching up with old friends and so on. I'm generally an introvert. I'm not that comfortable waking up with borrowed people. So I have an old set of friends for 15, 20, 25 years back. I generally spend time with them and family. Essentially, families also. Kids.
One retailer or the retail brand that you admire a lot?
There are multiple. I think Zara has done a good job of creating of using supply chain to actually create a strength on demand side. I think Zara has done a phenomenally good job of it. I think Lenskart has done a very good job of this whole omni-channel kind of. They were the ones who created a lot of believers out of non retailers in which up. So I think these are one local company which. Yep.
So there are lots of brands which are entering the arena, arena through D2C or maybe some other ways. So what are the 3 advices that you would love to give to them that they become like the achieve success in their company?
Yeah, I think initially because the rules of the game have changed significantly. Whereas earlier, getting to 100 crore revenue was used to take a long time for anyone. I'm saying non-internet here. These days, in case of internet, 1,500 crore is just given. Tum shuru karo. Especially if you want to do it quickly, then start a cosmetics brand. If you get 1,500 crore, like to know. Okay, and that is because of the efficacy of digital marketing, and digital marketing actually will get you the exact right audience, and all the machine learning AI algorithms sitting on the back. They'll bring you the right audience immediately, but going beyond that is very, very, very tricky. So my advice would be that just be prepared for that you would hit a ceiling. Don't just keep relying on graph. Firstly, when you launch, be very sharp with your product and do that product market fit. Continuously speak to customers, your customers, and so on and so forth. don't take up too much inventory, etc. And I'm saying start on most of the D2C brands start online first, and then they expanding to stores and only channel. I think that's the right strategy. Just be very, very conscious about when exactly tomorrow I'm doing that.
Going ahead, D2C or omnichannel, which channel is going to win and why?
The same. In the sense, D2C or omnichannel, you see?
Yeah.
When we are selling from our store, we are selling directly to customer. Had I been selling from shopper store, that would not have been D2C. That would have been B2C. But if I'm running my own stores, if I'm using my website to generate footfalls in my stores, I'm saying that is D2C as well as omnichannel.
Yeah.
So I'm saying omnichannel will have to be D2C. In any case, there are certain categories where you can just keep operating online also. But in majority of the categories, I think both simply require. We have seen that even in case of eyewear, case of furniture, in case of jewelry, in case of apparel, etc., almost everyone who started and created a strong product offering via their own website. And I don't consider selling Myntra, Flipkart, etc. as D2C, or that's you're just a seller there. You're not the brand. You're not even a brand, right? People are coming to Myntra to buy a white shirt or happens to be cheaper and they bought from you does not make you a brand. People coming to you and buying from you does make you a brand. Like people who have done a good job of creating their own D2C offering online, when they venture into the offline world, they fundamentally do good because there's so many people that come on the website every day. They're bound to get some info from that in your stores.
Good. Thank you so much for your time today, Gaurav. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise.
I hope you also enjoyed the conversation the way I learned about how Gaurav pivoted from being an engineer to a jewelry retailer. He is building up a brand in a brilliant way. I'll see you again next week with a new retailer and a new story. Till then, bye-bye.